Welcome back to Beaman Builds. We're doing a little bit of a how-to here. So I'm tearing apart the entire front end on my 2004 Dodge Ram. And I got to a point where I think this is something valuable for everybody. So we're gonna go through replacing the clapped out U-joints on this axle. So I have the entire front end disassembled right now to do hubs. I'm actually doing the hubs, the ball joints, kind of all the maintenance items. But while you're in there, something that's often neglected is the U-joints in these axles. So these are obviously factory. I don't think they've ever been replaced, or at least they don't look like it. So I'm gonna go through what you have to do to replace these. Real quick, kind of the tools of the trade here are doesn't have to be the I wasn't asking hammer, but it has to be a reasonably good sized hammer. Something you can use to push out the caps with when they get stuck. Little hammer and a screwdriver and a pick is what I'm going to be using to release the C-clips that are on these axles. And if you don't have one of these guys, I highly suggest it. So you can get U-joints out using a vise and a couple of sockets, or a press and a couple of sockets. But this is actually a dedicated tool. They're not crazy expensive. And a lot of times, if you don't want to buy one, you're only doing this one time, you can go to AutoZone or O'Reilly's or whatever auto parts store you use and rent one of these tools. So just get the right tool to make your life a lot easier. So the very first step is going to be getting these clips out of the axle. So I'll bring you in a little closer to show you what that looks like. On an axle that's this old or has not been replaced in this long, it's gonna be a pretty serious ordeal. All right, so hopefully you guys can see this here. The clips are right here that we're gonna be knocking out. And what I'm gonna do is get a screwdriver just on the edge of this clip and start knocking it out. So you can see how rusted these are, extremely rusted in here. So it's gonna be really hard to loosen up that clip. So I'm gonna be knocking it loose. Ideally with my screwdriver. If that doesn't work, I'll go to a actual punch. And one thing I have had to do is if there's too much pressure, I'll actually relieve the pressure on one side or the other before I can get these clips out. So now you guys are gonna get the fun of just watching me struggle with this for the next few minutes. We'll probably just put it up on a time lapse for you. All right, so now you can see I got this one loose, and you can see that it's up off of the actual clip. So what I'm gonna try and do now is just pop this out the last little bit here. Hopefully you guys will be able to see that. Normally I can get these out with just popping them out with the screwdriver. This one's being a little bit of a pain. I'm gonna see if I can grab it with my pliers here, which is also not working, so that will probably just make that magically disappear. All right, there we go. We got this guy loose. Once it's loose, I'll just kind of pop it out. So there we go. Gonna have to do that 3 more times. All right, I was able to get one clip off on each side, which should be enough to get these things moving. The other ones are so frozen in, I can't get them to move. So what I'm gonna try and do is use my press to pull those U-joints over a little bit so I can get a little better grab on the clips. All right, we're able to get one of those pulled over. So now I should be able to get to this clip. A little bit easier at least. It's exactly why you replace these. Look at this. Completely rusted, completely dry. That thing was getting ready to fail for sure. Now that I have a little more access, I'm just working on that clip again, which is still being a heck of a pain in the butt here. All right, since I can't get this clip out, and there's really no way to get this cap out without it, I'm gonna push the cap in just a little bit, so hopefully I can free up that clip, because it is really frozen in there. I'm just using a 20 mil socket for this one. Impact sockets work good if you're gonna hammer on them. Move a little bit. There we go. Now I should be able to get to it. Bring you guys in real quick. Show you what I'm working with here. All right, so now you can see we have just a little space here between the clip and the body of the ears of this right here. So now I should be able to get in there with my screwdriver and hopefully pop this thing out, but it's really rusted in there. Victory! Whoa! When I broke that clip off, it actually came off in 3 pieces. That's how rusted it was. All right, there we go. Should be able to finish it up now. Now these were indefinite need of being replaced. Holy cow. Terrible. These are the bearings that were in there. Look at this. They're all broke. That's amazing. All right, so this cap seized in the bore, and I couldn't get it out with my tool. It just broke the cap. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna punch it out using the punch I told you to keep in your toolkit earlier. So I'll be punching it out from this side going that way. I'll just kind of let you guys watch. Hopefully it'll stay in my vise here. Take this up a little. Good. We're almost there. Just being a little pain. Alright guys, next step for me, and this is definitely not needed at all, but I'm actually gonna sandblast these down so they're good as new. And then I'll be using this die grinder with a pretty non-aggressive flat disc. I'll go through the insides of these and get them cleaned out. So right now I'm gonna go to the blast cabinet, get these blasted off so they look like new, and then I'll clean up these bores and then we'll paint them and throw them back in the truck. I'm really sorry guys. I'm very confident you're not gonna be able to see in there very well, but I will give it a try anyways. This is why I like the blast cabinet. So fresh out of the blast cabinet, it always looks like a new part. So we're gonna get this thing cleaned up, blown off, and I'll actually paint it. Again, this step is completely unnecessary. The only reason I'm doing this is because I'm doing a full restoration on this truck and I want every part to look brand new. So totally not necessary, but if you want it to look like brand new, easy way to do it. All right, we got our parts painted up here after I sandblasted them. Now we're on to the last piece of the puzzle, which is reassembly, which is actually a lot easier than disassembly. So disassembly, when you're dealing with rusty parts, always takes forever. Reassembly on these is typically pretty easy. So most of the time you can just pound these caps in, call it good. If you can't just pound them in, sometimes you'll have to use a press or a vise, depending on what you have available to you. So I always do the short side of these front axle shafts first. We're going to take our caps off, being very, very careful to make sure that the roller bearings inside of here don't fall down, because if they do, you'll have a really bad day. We'll slide the cap in, or slide the cross in, then we'll slide our caps on. Just being really careful, like I said, to make sure these roller bearings are staying in place. And then we'll get lined up really well and just give it a couple of taps in the place here. Kind of work in both sides. Looks like you might be on the bearings. Alright, once you got one side in good, take the new clips provided in your kit. And sometimes you can get these on by hand, sometimes you gotta hit them with the hammer a little bit. This one's being a little bit tough, so I'm just gonna knock it in place with a brass hammer. So I like to keep tension on with a thumb, and then just kind of pop her in, and then it'll just pop right into place. Then we'll finish hammering down the other cap here. You'll have to get it in good enough to where that lip is clear so you can get your clip on. Okay, looks like we're about there. Not quite enough. Here we go. Same thing, I'm just gonna hold some tension on it with my thumb, so hopefully it doesn't go flying across the room. Pop her into place. I always like to make sure it moves somewhat freely. It'll be a little tough, but it shouldn't be hard. Okay, now we're gonna do the same thing on the other side. Take off our caps, make sure our bearings don't fall. Go ahead and get the cross in place here. Normally these just slide in really easy. If they don't, I'll tap them with a brass hammer sometimes just to make sure I get them all the way in. So this guy's being a wee bit difficult. There we go. Okay, now we're just gonna put our caps into place, same as before. Good. So what I'm checking here is just to make sure that those bearings are in a good spot before I send it home. Get that side on. Throw in our clip. These things, they will go flying across your shop, never to be seen again. Ask me how I know. There we go. That one I was able to get on with my thumbs. It's always nice. This one is being a bit of a bugger. I'm having a little bit of trouble getting this one cap to sit in far enough to get my clip on. So I'm going to go ahead and push it down in the press. You can do the exact same thing in a vise if you don't have a press handy. Alright, I'm going to get a socket in place here just to make sure this is Oh, the seat as far as I need. Just want to make sure everything stays square. So all we're doing here is just giving enough pressure so our clip can get in, then we can relieve the pressure. All right, so now, gonna do the same thing. Make sure stuff moves. This is a little bit tight. So when it's tight like this, what I like to do is just tap the caps a few times. It finally relieves the pressure, which it did. And then last step for us, because this is a serviceable U-joint, which means it has a port for grease. So I'm just gonna put that little grease zerk in, and then I'll grease this guy up. That's it, guys. Brand new U-joints, and our axles looks like brand new. Really hope that was useful for you guys. I'll be doing more of these as I find them. But if there's anything that you guys find that's difficult for you, or you want something specific, let me know, and if I have the opportunity, I'll make sure I get it out for you guys. Hope you enjoy that, Devin. Struggling with this.